Hello YouTubers and hello students, and welcome to this YouTube series on, as you can see, Unreal Engine 4. In this series, it's mainly orientated towards my students. As you probably have guessed by now, I am a teacher. And at the moment I'm teaching my students how to create a 2D side scroller in Unreal Engine 4. So this is going to be a complete series on how to create a 2D side scroller in Unreal Engine 4, starting all the way from the beginning. So we're actually going to use the Unreal Engine's template. We're going to modify that template to how we would like it. And during our journey, we're going to go through the process of creating sprites and sprite sheets. We're also going to edit, for example, character interactions, get them to shoot and create enemies, and pretty much everything that you would have in a 2D side scroller. We're also going to look at creating some pixel art. So if not many of you are used to creating sprites by using pixel art and etc., this is probably a tutorial you might want to watch. This tutorial is basically going to be on setting our scene so we can actually start working with our scroller. Hopefully it won't be a very lengthy session, probably around about 20 minutes or so, I would hope. And hopefully you'll learn something during this journey. So let's get you onto the main screen. So as you can see, we're using Unreal Engine, probably one of the best engines I've used so far out of all the engines that are currently out there. And students have been asked to create a side scroller as a project. And basically they've asked for a little bit of help in regards to materials they can look at. I mean, I know YouTube's a very big area, you can find lots of stuff from that, but I suppose they just wanted a little bit more easier to see some things. And the current version I'm using on Unreal Engine is 4.10.4. I do know that you can use, well, really I use 4.8 and that seemed to be okay. So I'm not too sure about any below that, but I suppose if it's got Paper 2D, then everything else should be okay in regards to the tutorial that you're going to follow. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to launch 4.10.4. Depending on obviously your machine and etc., depends on load time and how long it would load or launch the editor itself. As you can see, these are just a few little projects I've worked on, just messing around with things, to be honest, and getting things to work. But in this series, we're actually going to create a new project, and we're not going to use C++. That's a big no-no for my students. They're all game designers, so they prefer more artistic stuff. As much as I'd love to use C++, I'm going to stick with the blueprints. So if it's something you want to look into blueprints and how you can use blueprints for your side scroller, this is probably something you want to watch. And we're definitely not going to use this side scroller because you can see there's 3D elements inside this side scroller, and we're going to go all retro. So we're actually going to go back to the good old 2D side scroller games. They seem to be coming back into trends. So yeah, I mean, if this is something you really wanted to make, then you're definitely in the right place to learn how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to create a new project. We're actually going to call this ET for YouTube. I'm going to call it TUD for tutorial. I might as well put T2D at the end so I know what I'm referring to. Remember, you can't put any spaces in the name. Unreal doesn't like that. I have no idea why. It's probably to do with coding and etc., so it wouldn't surprise me. And we're actually not going to start with any content because we're going to be creating all our content on our own. So it's definitely, I mean, if you want to have some start content in there, you can, but to be honest, we don't need that. It's something that we don't require as yet, so don't really worry about that one, to be honest. So let's create the project and let's get started. So again, depending on your machine will depend on how quick this loads. I've got an alright machine, so it's nice and quick. So we get introduced to basically the 2D side scroller template. As you can see, it comes with a mannequin. It comes with this network player start. It comes with a bit of text saying, well, hey, this is a 2D side scroller element. Now, I do hope that you have got some Unreal experience with navigation and things like that, because I'm not going to go through all of that. But if it's something that you're not sure about, please let me know, and I could probably put a YouTube tutorial together for you if you can't remember how to navigate, or if there's something you might want to know, then obviously put a comment in the section and etc. So I'm just going to navigate around the area that we've got here, and as you can see with Paper 2D, everything's thin. hence why it's called Paper 2D. It works on 2 dimensions. It's only going to work on our X and Z axes. We're going to eliminate the Y, which gives obviously the 3-dimensional depth that you can see down here in the mirror. Sorry, not the mirror, the axes. Mirror, where's that come from? So we're only going to be using this X and Z for the majority of the tutorials. I'll explain why we don't use the Y. I mean, we will get to that because it is required in some crazy way, and you'll see why. I don't get that why and why. But the Y elements is just basically representing how far back you want, for example, specific objects to be. So in this case, you can see that on the Y-axis, this background area or the background sprite is quite far back. Whereas if you see these platformers, they're right in the front, hence 0 value. And again, this is going to be very important to us, is this Y0 value in whatever we're working with. So this tutorial is all about setting up your canvas. So what we're actually going to do is, the first thing we're going to do, and I always do this, is change this source panel just to look like this. It's a little bit more easier for me instead of having it like this. I hate navigating like this. And then I have to go back and see I'm already lost, so I'll click on them. So what I'd rather do is I just open it this way, a little bit more easier for me to see everything, and it's easy navigation, if I'm being honest. And the most important thing that I work with, I mean, again, this is preference. You could work in this view if you like, but I don't specifically like working in this view. I'll always work in this front view here. And it works exactly the same way as if you're working around the area itself, is that all the keys work. So I'm just going to zoom out so I can see all my level. And this is pretty much our level here. So you can see these were the sides, and then these were all the platforms, and there's our character there. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to get rid of all this. Now, I wouldn't suggest click and drag, because as you can see, when I click and drag, it's actually selected my character, believe it or not, even though I drag down here. So what I like to do is I'll just delete it manually. Again, this is all about preferences. You could go into this area here, select all the ledges, so select all of them like that, and press delete. That will do exactly the same thing, but leave a folder, so we can probably delete that too. And I'll just delete that one out as well. Now, if I had to look at my perspective view, you'll see all the ledges are gone, but I've still got this stuff here, so the Paper 2D side-scroller text field here, and also this backdrop. So I could also get rid of that, going back to the front view. I could zoom in, click on this little green line, which you can see it outlines that whole background sprite, and we're going to delete that out. And I'm also going to delete this text, so I can actually click and drag, which didn't work because it selected the character as well. So my own fault, really. Should have told you not to do that, and I just did it myself. And we're going to delete that out. So now if we look in a perspective view, you can see it's just our guy, or the mannequin, just just hanging about there and not doing much. The second most important thing that I look at when setting up my work area, now again, this is all about preference, is that this, when you play your project. Now, if some people prefer to play like this, that you can see it working in the viewport. I don't specifically like that. Don't know why. It's just something I don't like using. What I do prefer to use is this one called the new editor window. It's something I prefer. I get a much bigger view of the area I'm working with. I suppose it comes in hand with wearing glasses and etc. But this is a view that I prefer to look at. Now you'll notice that when I played the project, the character just drops and then disappears. Basically, he's falling out the map or going into hell per se. But you'll notice that the project doesn't restart, or the game or the level doesn't restart at all. It's because it hasn't been programmed to do that, and we haven't made a blueprint to say, okay, when he falls out the world, then reset the level and etc. But we'll get to that point of doing that. So if you are using this viewport, you'll notice that you've got no mouse. Neither, we can't use the mouse at all. What we have to actually do is press the escape key to close that window down. And you'll notice that we can't find our guy now because we played in the viewport. So let's try and find him. There he is, just hanging about here and just chilling. So the reason why he was falling through is because obviously there's nothing below him. It's just a whole lot of empty space, and this is exactly what we wanted for the project. We definitely wanted a whole empty area to work with, and the only thing we really wanted was maybe this network stuff, because I don't know, maybe during this tutorial series I can show you how to implement that, so you can maybe have two people playing your game at the same time, or you can have more, or you can make it into a full network featured game, and etc. I can show you how to do all that. That's not a problem, but we'll see how time goes and how long these tutorials take. It might be for a different series. I'm not too sure. But our main concern right now is our mannequin. As you can see, he's got a camera attached to him, and pretty much nothing else is here because we don't really need anything. So my next step is to go into our content browser here, and we're going to create two folders. The first folder, so if you're not sure how to do that, is you right click and new folder, and you're going to create a folder called BP. And this is going to hold all our blueprints in the game. For example, enemies shooting or anything like that, we can create a blueprint for that, or any actors, so any AI or enemies we're going to place into the game, we'll put in the blueprint folder. And the main one that we're going to be using quite a lot is going to be this one called sprites. So we're going to create a folder called sprites, and that's where all the sprites will go. Now, if you like me and you like colors, hence why I teach game art, is that I'll actually change these folders. It's a bit more easier on my eyes. So to do that, I can right click, set color, and because it's a blueprint, I'm going to make that blue, because it is a blueprint. And for sprites, let's choose something colorful. So new color, let's go for yellow. Yellow is a nice color, so let's go for yellow. I'm getting very good with this whole yellow thing. There you go, nice and bright. So we can see that these are the two folders we're going to be using mainly in the process of creating this game. So our next step is to get this guy standing on something. Now, the idea behind what my students are doing is they're creating, obviously, a 2D platformer game, but their criteria is that they have to use 32 by 32 pixel tiles. So it's going to be very retro. We're going back to probably Sonic days with the whole style of sprites. And I'm going to show you the whole principle behind that and how we create those sprites and etc. But for this tutorial in particular, I'm just going to rob a sprite for now. So if you just go onto your internet and you just type in 32 by 32 grass block, that'll do. So 32 by 32 grass block. As you can see, a lot of Minecraft ones pop up, but we want to look for 32 by 32. So we've got one here, and we've got one here. Because don't forget, our game is straight on. So because we're looking straight onto the character, we don't want a grass block that looks like this, because that's pretty pointless. We definitely don't want a grass block looking anything like that. So we'll either choose this one or this one. For now, I'll just take this one. And I'm going to view the image. Right click, save image as. And as you can see, I've already got that. I made a folder for it called YT-tut, and I just saved it into that folder. I'll just save over it again, just so we can, obviously, for the process of this tutorial. And the most easiest thing to do is, because we've got it on our browser, especially if you're using Google Chrome. If you're not, then you might have to do it a different way. Is just drag that in to your sprites folder. So make sure it is going into your sprites folder. I mean, you can move it later on if you do make a mistake, but for now, we're just going to use the sprites folder. Now, you can see I can't just drag that on because at the moment it's just a texture. That's how it thinks it is. And what I'm about to do now is going to be in a separate tutorial, but I'm just going to do it really quickly. I'll explain it in more detail when we get there, but I need to actually turn this into a sprite. So I'm just going to go sprite, apply paper 2D, and then right click again, sprite action, extract, and say extract. Again, I'm going to explain all of those steps in a lot more detail when further tutorials come, but for now, I just need to make sure I've got something for him to stand on and to show a bit of scale. Now, I said to you, I always work in the front view, so I'm always going to go back to the front. And I'm just going to place this tile that I just created underneath the character, like so. Okay, and as you can see, it's created, it's actually put the sprite onto the screen, and if we go into perspective, you can see that the block is there, but if we look at our character, he is a giant compared to the block that we got on the screen. Now, if I play, you can see it works perfectly fine. We've got our character there. We've got our 32 by 32 block, or tile, as they called. But we can see that there's a few errors. If we're going back to retro gaming, the camera distance that we see there is completely different to what it used to be in retro gaming. And also, the character is way too big. And now we're going to use this one for now, but later in the tutorials, we're going to learn how to create our own little sprite animation, or our own little character, and we'll learn how to do all the animations and etc. with it. But we're just going to use the mannequin. So we need to change a few settings with our mannequin, and it's very easy to do. We're going to go to this 2D side scroller BP part. Okay, we're going to go to blueprints. Okay, and this is where he's housed. So the 2D side scroller character is going to be in here, and that's why I didn't want any start content or anything like that, because I just wanted him. I just wanted the character. So let's double click on him. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and we're going to go onto the viewport, and what we can see when the viewport is our character, obviously. Okay, but what's mostly important is the camera. Now, I said to you that the camera is too far out. Okay, when we played the game, so when we look at it again, it's pretty far out. Now, if I had to move the camera to him and play the game, okay, you can see that nothing has changed. All right, so that's one mistake that a lot of people have made, is that when they're trying to change the camera of looking at the character, they make the simple mistake of moving the camera and hoping that works, and that's not entirely the case. All right, the camera is just pretty much the view screen that we're looking at in regards to the whole level itself. And looking here at my components, you can see I've got this side view camera component here. Now this side view camera component is going to be very important, because not that I want to move it, but it's going to be these settings here that are going to be very, very important in regards to our side scroller. Now hopefully you've got on orthographic. Orthographic is basically just going to represent flat on. If we had perspective, you could make a game that has sort of a perspective view on it. So you can actually make a 2D side scroller that has a perspective view. So maybe not entirely, I suppose you could say three-dimensional, but it's giving the illusion of a three-dimensional game. But in this tutorial case, we're going to leave this on orthographic. But the main thing we're going to change is this ortho width here. Now this is really important. Depending on what we change the ortho width is going to depend on how much we see of the game. Now remember, we're going retro, so my sweet spot for retro is 350 ortho width. That's my preference. I mean, you could change it to your own preference, but in my case, 350 is pretty spot on. Okay, so if we compile and play the game, you'll notice that it's brought our camera a lot more closer. So we're using the 350 that we've put in of the character. But you'll also notice that we only see the upper part of the character. We're not actually seeing the whole character. And that's not because our camera setting's wrong, but if we go back into our viewport and we click on this thing called the camera boom, you'll notice that the camera boom is actually at an angle. Right? So this camera is actually pointing towards the upper part of the character, and we actually want to move this camera down. Now, again, a big no-no. Don't just click on it and move it down. If we look at your camera boom now, look, that's still left behind. Okay, and that's not going to make any difference. Well, it will, but when you're moving and stuff, it's going to cause a few issues. So what we do is, instead of moving the camera, we're going to change the camera boom. Okay, so if you think about this as a selfie stick, you have your stick, obviously on the selfie, with your camera, and your camera's at the top, and wherever you move the selfie stick will depend on your view that you have with your picture or whatever you're doing. So we're going to change this boom to go flat. Now it's a very easy step. All we're going to change is where it says socket offset, we're going to change that to 0. Okay, now you can see that goes flat against the character, just like all traditional two-dimensional games. And also, it gives us a better view. So if we play, you can see we can see the majority of the whole character. But we have a problem. The character itself is really big. And if you think about the game we're creating by using 32 by 32 sprites, we can't really have a character this big to test our game. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the size of our character. And the best way to do that is we're going to select the character, So we're just going to click on him. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to press R and we're going to scale him down. Okay. So we're going to just scale him down a bit. Now, depending on your preference, I prefer to be round about this 1.1 scale here. Okay, so in the scale area. Again, it's entirely up to you how you want him to look. Obviously, 1 being his normal state, then obviously drop him down to the scale that you want. But I prefer maybe 1.1. But we have a small issue that we've got this really tiny character. So we've shrunk the mannequin size. But we've got this capsule. Now, if you're not sure about what this capsule is pretty much his collision. So the collision is where the character, say for example, you walk into something, an event will happen. So currently, if I had to play this, you can see I've got a very tiny character, but he's quite high above the tile that I placed into my game or my level. So I need to change this capsule. Now, again, it's very, very simple. We're just going to click on the capsule. And the only things we're going to change are these 2 values in the shape here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the height of the capsule. Now, you see I can't go lower than the 40 value here because obviously it makes a perfect sphere. So we're actually going to change the pill radius to fit the character. So we can actually scroll, zoom in so we can actually see what's going on. So let's move our camera in a bit. Okay. And let's change the capsule height now, so we can actually drop the height, and let's fit it around our character as well as we can. So actually, that's not too bad actually. So let's have a look at his feet. So let's yeah, I think that's okay actually for now for the tutorial series. It's not too bad. But you'll notice because I'm on a camera boom, my camera's followed the character, so it's not going to have any issues when I'm scaling. So when we play, our character is just falling to hell. So let's have a look at what's going on here. So I know it's definitely nothing wrong in here. So let's compile and save that. So let's make sure nothing's going on here. And let's have a look inside our perspective view. Let's see what's going on, and we can see where the issue lies here. So if we click on the character, move him down towards the tile, you can see that the character is behind the tile. Now, this is why I said to you the X, Y, and Z is going to be very vital in regards to making these 2D side scrollers. Reason 1 is because if the character is moved on the Y value, will depend how he acts in the game. Now, currently the character, if you look, he's currently set to -13 on the Y value, which is putting him behind this block. Okay, so this sprite that we've put in. So what we need to do is actually bring him to go on top of the sprite, and the easiest way to do that is just click on the Y-axis, press, or just type in 0, really to be honest, and press enter, and you'll notice the character then is now on top. Oops, my snap grid is too high, so let's change that to 1. You can see that the character now is on a 0 value, which is really, really important because don't forget we're working with very thin objects here, so you can see how thin that is. And he is now in the right location. So if we play the game now, you'll notice that the character, okay, is now on top of the sprite. He's very small, his jump and everything's all crazy, but we're going to change all that. But this is the sort of relevance that we are wanting inside the game. Obviously, you might have a bigger character than that, but for now, it's going to work, so we'll be able to see our terrain. You might make him a bit bigger than that, but for now, we're just going to make a super big terrain area and a very tiny character, because this is all about level design, not really about creating characters itself. So that pretty much concludes what we wanted to do in this tutorial of creating or setting up our area that we want to work with. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode, and your next episode will be looking at how do we start creating sprites. So we're going to start using Photoshop and etc. to create sprites and sprite sheets and things like that. Again, my name's Waz. It was nice to show you a few things. Again, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. Remember to subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Cheers.